Okay, today you're going to need your book. Now, okay, I don't know if I got something mixed up, would not be unusual. But we did Christian counseling last week and last month, and that should have been this month. And I went past the power of the
It should be
plan.
next month, no?
No, March.
Oh, it's Walmart next month.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is do February's work today, the power of the plan. I just did that to see if you would find out.
Well, actually, I never noticed it till this morning, now me.
I knew he was mixed up, but this really.
We did notice that we didn't want to question the teachers.
All right, do a 10,000 word essay then. Thank you. I was studying this and I thought, I am really messed up. So, all right. Boy, look at that. They're sitting in the easy chairs in sunroom. Wow.
Pastor Kelley,
Yes.
just made an address that was written.
Okay.
You get yours?
People know what hymns are.
Just read it.
That is my question.
Did you get yours with you,
Do
Henry?
people know what hymns are? Well, we don't have any easy chairs like they have in Sunderland.
I was
But may
using
God
this
bless you
morning
as
and
you
I
sit
went
there and enjoy your lesson. That's all right. Okay, we're going to pray and get started this morning. Thank you, Lord, again of this day. Thank you for each student, each life that's here. Lead us, help us, Lord, to be able to teach them things that will be a benefit for them, but also for your kingdom. Thank you for their commitment, their lives, their energy, their desire to follow through your will and purpose. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, our lesson today is I have out of page 24 in the little book that we gave you. Now, I will kind of follow true to this, and maybe as we go along, maybe ask you to point out some things, maybe in some chapters, if you have your material. If not, you can share it. If not, that's okay. The power of a plan. You can plan to bring your book next time to class. All right, so I think we've kind of, although it will filter in again, we've kind of talked a little bit about setting a goal and goals, establishing goals in our life. But one of the things to do is as we establish goals, it's then how do we reach that objective. This is something that I want to do, but my goal that I establish, how am I going to arrive there? And this is where it's very important to accomplish that you begin to set up a plan how to fulfill what you want to do. When you develop a plan, it also looks at opportunities and maybe some difficulties in achieving the goal. So you have an end goal. This is what I want to see established, or this is what I would like to see come about. Now, because of dealing with Bible school and church, we often think of spiritual goals as far as ministries, activities, events, things we're involved in. But this really can be applicable to everyday life. Your goal may be to totally redecorate your house. That may be your end goal. And that's something you want to do, but you have to step back. So maybe Elizabeth is shaking her head yes, very strongly, so maybe we can help formulate a plan of how to do that. Now, it doesn't say we're going to do it. We're just the planners. We're not the workers. Okay, that's not my pay grade. So even something like that, in a natural sense, these are some things that if you can get a handle or an understanding, you can apply them to many areas of your life. So let's say you want to redo your house and decorating. That is the goal. Well, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? Who is going to do it? And how are you going to do it? If you're going to redecorate your house, I think you know you just don't launch in to starting it. The thing is where do you start first? What do you want to do? What is the cost of doing this? The cost may exceed your wallet greatly or your bank account, so that we need to step back and begin to say, this is the first room, the next room, and so on. Now, one of the ways to accomplish your end goal is to begin to break it down. So maybe you could say, we're going to cover some of this, but to give you an idea, and that seems to be an easy thing today to look at, in 2 years, from this month, I would like to see my entire house redecorated. Oh, what's the problem? Your house is, you don't have a large flat, you can do that in 2 weeks. Well, maybe you could, but I'm looking at me. I know my finance, I know my energy, I know this, this, and this. So what you want to do is say within 2 years, this is what I would like to have done. Now, goal setting doesn't mean that 23 months from now, everybody hits the panic station because there's been not one nail, one brush, one tin of paint bought, you've not looked at carpets, curtains, you've done nothing. That's not planning, okay? That's not setting up how you're going to do this. So that's the first thing. The first step is planning, and we've talked about that. What are you going to do? Being realistic and setting the right goal. Now, when you begin to establish a plan, it pays because you can get the most effective results with the least effort and resistance. Waiting for something to force you into doing the room can seem more haphazard than if you had time to plan. Okay, I'm sorry, this is an easy illustration to use, but we rushed in and did this, and now I wish we hadn't have done it that way. There's lack of planning. And you're turning, well, okay, you all look at each other and say you're smarter than that, okay. And at watching the whatever, you know, look in the mirror and tell yourself you're smarter than that. Now there's sometimes in crisis you don't have a choice. The ceiling falls in, you've gone out for the day, you come in, the toilet's overflowing, the ceiling. That's happened to us before, the ceilings come in. So you can't like, we're going to do this in 2 months. First segment, we've come to the conclusion, I need a new ceiling. Okay, let's go get a cup of tea. No, you gotta get it fixed. But I'm talking about where it's not an emergency situation where something has to be done. Also, it can help you to use your time more wisely. You can look at some of the pitfalls as you're making your plan along the way. And also, if you have a plan, when there's things that happen along the way, you're able to kind of work those things in. Well, I guess I need to stand over here. It's like when you are planning to build, they will always tell you, you can get the architect, they can do the drawings, you get the permission, everything is ready to go. But you need to build within that plan because not everything is going to go as exactly as you think. Because maybe the supplies you want are no longer available, or the color scheme is changed by the wife along the way. There's something. So how do you factor in? A plan helps you to work with this. So a long-range plan also brings continuity. And when you have a long-range plan, you can start breaking it down. Now, I don't know if they can see here, but just in a simple way, I tell them full-time school, it's the very same thing. The end result here, this is 20, okay, in 2020, okay, how many rooms do you have? We're going to pick on the list.
1, 2, 3, 4. Get my whole
5, okay. Elizabeth has 5 rooms, and she would like to see totally redecorated by 2020 March. Okay. Now, in wanting to see it accomplished, she's got to set some measures along the way. First of all, What is the cost? What is the time? Who is going to do the work? Okay? You start looking at things this way. The cost factor, the time, and the who. Now, it may be a little hard. You start going through, and you may think all it's going to take is just some wallpaper and paint. You got to do the carpet. But once you get into it, you may find that there's a counter in here you want to take out. You can apply this. I've done this with bus ministry. I'll tell you, we're talking about a plan. And what you do, you have 5 rooms. You begin to look, and within the first 3 months, you want room 1 to be done. 1 room to be finished. You have to establish this. You give yourself for a little leeway, your money, then you come here. You want to do room 2 and 3. And maybe room 4 might be the bath and the shower and the tub and the toilet. And that's a major thing because plumbing. Because once you start taking it out, oh Elizabeth, we found something in here, we've got to redo the plumbing, etc. So what you're doing, you're beginning to set a time out instead of just rushing in. Now sometimes in church, a lot of times we rush in where devils dare to tread in doing things. Let's do this. We're going to start this ministry next week. And nobody thinks, who's going to do it? How are we going to do it? How long are we going to do it? All of this stuff. What's it going to cost? If I pop the clogs in 2 weeks, who's going to run the thing? What's happening? You know, what's going to happen? Planning things, setting. Now, when you start planning as well, my wife is very good at this, but sometimes I've gone home, hey, I know what we can do, you know. And I'm thinking about the church or the Bible college, and I've got this idea, and not saying we're going to start it tomorrow, but I've got this idea, and the church can, and you know, now I'm leaving Pastor B to do a lot more planning. I'm just trying to carry out things, but this is what we're going to do, and I'm, this could really, and she starts asking questions. And well, what about, oh, well that, but have you thought about this? Now, when you start building a plan and moving forward with something, you have people that will be involved to help you because people will see it from their perspective. If Elizabeth would be brave, and maybe some could go, Elizabeth would say, I want to paint this room this week, and this room over here, and this room over here. What do you think? And maybe Mary Ann would say, that's a good idea, but have you thought about this? What are you going to do? Oh, we'll just know. What are you going to do about this over here? A plan, you with me so far?
Yeah.
It sounds very silly, but you really might be surprised how much more you will accomplish, how many pitfalls you can avoid. And there's always going to be some pitfalls. And also, I just begin to measure this of how I'm going to accomplish it. I think I've shared, I don't know if I've shared before, also in developing things, one of the first things I really initiated this on, it was a real growing and stretching thing for me, is when I really started to get involved in evangelism. I was 19 or 20. I'd been doing things, but I really took on board the area where I went to help start a church. We had various housing areas that had lots of children in them. And they weren't going to church. Nobody was interested about those children going to church. And I will clarify, those were the days that people weren't worried that you were there to kidnap their children or to harm their children physically or abuse them and all of this stuff and do crazy, bizarre things that's happening in our world today. And so we wanted to start bringing all of these children to church for Sunday school. That meant we had to provide the place that they could come to Sunday school in. The staff at the church had to be prepared to handle that. We had to get them to church. How are we going to get them to church? And what we buy to get them into church, is it mechanically sound to transport them to church? How do we get these kids interested in even coming to church? How do we sustain this thing long term? There was a lot of things that we had to start planning. And did I do it right? No, but I learned a lot of the value We wanted to start bringing children to church. That was our first goal. But the teachers had to be prepared. There was at one point when we started to do this, we escalated to we were bringing over 300 children to church on any given Sunday.
Yeah.
It was a hoot. And I overextended in the sense because we had no trouble getting children to church. Because we bring them in, they would go to classes. As soon as their classes were over, they didn't go to church like we have because we just wanted to get them acquainted and then hopefully stay long enough they get involved with the youth. Then after their Sunday school lesson, we would transport them home. And at one point the teachers just said, if you bring one more kid to church, I'm going to hang you. We were being overrun with children in the church. We could not sustain. The actual church structure itself could not sustain more children than that. Could I? Oh, we could have. We were pulling them out of the woodwork to come. We did all kind of activities to have the children, and word just spread like wildfire. So, in saying that, when I arrived to start doing this, we had zero. We didn't know the area we were going to. We didn't know how we were going to get them. The church was small at that point. Who's going to help me? Because I can't do this on my own. So first of all, we had to source out where are we going to bring the children from. We had two areas to look into. We began to acquaint ourselves with the area. The next was the money that it was going to take to be able to do this. So we had to start working on projects to raise money. One, how are we going to transport them? So we need to secure means of transportation. That meant we bought old used yellow buses that used to transport kids to school in. Well, you could buy the bus, but who's going to be the mechanic? Because the church couldn't sustain the cost of going to the shop every week. Yeah, so God has a way of really helping out. There was a family that moved there from another area because of work, and the man had worked on buses before and had driven buses, and he made himself available. So that answered part of my dilemma of driving. Then the insurance on the bus. Then how do we sustain running the buses every week? Now, I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but these were things that were coming up. So once we started to get the transport, we knew the area. They were telling the teachers. They were expanding the classrooms. They were equipping some others, what they call teachers' helpers, the main teachers, but those who could help. Because at first we did bring in about 40 children, and then 50, and then 60, and we thought we can do better than that. We got into a real mode, you know. And so those things had to be worked out. We don't get the kids here until we have the room, okay? In order to get the kids there, we've got to have the bus. In order to get the bus, you've got to have the money. Then when we started all this, who's going to help me? So we had to solicit for people in the church to come and to help us in this endeavor. That meant we had to go into the community where the kids were. And we had to reach out to the children in that area. So we had some who volunteered for every Saturday. Every Saturday. We would go out. And that was an ongoing process. But we would go out and start being with the children. Getting acquainted with them. Going to places where they played ball. All type of things. Even just going to their homes, knocking on the door. We'd like to have your children come to Sunday school. Is that a problem? Most times parents would say, yes, you can have them for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What day would you like them, you know? I will tell you the area we were working in, there was, the children come, and later when they started going into the youth group, would say, your folks know we're here? Well, they don't care. And we'd say, come on. And this is prior to all this nonsense we have today. We said, you got to let them know. And parents would say, we don't care if you can stay, they can stay as long as they want. It was because the area was very severe. The one girl, she's now a pastor's wife. A man is a great preacher. But she was one girl that we started at 8 years old. Just her brother dealt in drugs, and one day he ended up shot right there. You know, just the area we worked into, I sent an older man to go one night instead of me going. And when he came back, he was white, but he was really white. He said, I'm never doing that again. I said, why? He said, well, those kids I went to pick up when I was getting the 2 kids coming out of the house. He said, before the kids came out, here come the husband running out. And behind him was his wife with a big knife chasing him. And he tripped and fell. She got right on him and she was ready to do him in. And the neighbors caught her in time. So he said, I'll never, I said, So those are the kind of, I'm serious, the kind of areas we worked in. So we got people to go. And we started having children to come. But again, you got to, how do we maintain what we have going? And so every Saturday we would go. Not only every Saturday, but Sunday morning. You had to have a driver, so we needed drivers. We had 1. And later we were going to need 2 and 3 drivers. But as I'm just talking about how you have to begin to plan. You don't just show up with a bus. You have, how are we going to handle this? You have to think it through, write it down. And let me just say, in developing a plan, don't just do it here. Type it out, write it out. Because when you do that, you will think more clearly. Because when you think more, if I've got it right, like when you're writing things out or typing things out. I.e., we want to do this in 2020, these rooms. But when you start writing it out, you start thinking of other things you hadn't thought of. Just thinking about it. So we had to write it out. And begin to follow through. It got to the point, some children, we would go back after church on Sunday, and kids were crying. You didn't get me this morning for church. They were waiting, crying. And so our way around that was, we developed wake-up crews. So at 8:30 in the morning, we had people out, knocking on doors, waking children up to make sure they're ready for Sunday school. Again, it was days, and I'm just talking about a plan, it was days where you could walk in people's homes and parent would say, hey, the kids ready? No, but if you want to get them ready, go in and get them ready. We had wake-up crews that would help children get ready for church, to come to Sunday school. And the children started coming into Sunday school, so the children started to get water baptized and spirit-filled as well. And some of the children who came into Sunday school were children who could be rather smelly or come in at times with their faces very, very dirty. And some of our classes even had to equip themselves that they could even help the children wash their hands. I'm serious, or wash their face off. It was quite a state of areas where we went in to get children, but out of that, we had preachers and young people baptized and spirit-filled. But it's saying all of that. So we had wake-up crews. We had people going on Saturdays. When a bus went out, it had a driver. It had a captain, we called it, on the bus, and a secretary of the bus. So they were careful. Then we had, if the bus got really full, we had to have helpers to help monitor the children, because kids, you put the windows down, they want to hang down, you know. All kind of stuff. You had to be careful with all of that. But it all started with just something God placed in my heart. But when it ended up that we had 3, and once we had 4 buses going, it didn't just happen. You had to sit down. This is what I feel to do. How are we going to start? Now, I have to tell you, I never thought we would end up with 4 buses. I was looking for 1 or 2 buses that we could fill up with children. And when we were reaching 300 kids, the teacher says, so I'm chasing rabbits and just rabbiting here this morning. But planning helps. Because when we started to develop wake-up crews and we started to develop further buses, we had learned on some things. And then we started like people involved that in my excitement, they would say, Brother Kelley, or back then, I was just known as Bob, you know, they'd say, hey, have you thought of this? And I'm like, wow, no, you know. So when you start planning some things, what's really good is if you have people that can work with you, because they will think different than you. They will see things different than you will see them. Not being critical, it's just their perception. So we go to Elizabeth's house. She would say, this is what we're going to do. But Mary Ann, I don't know if you want to start there first. Well, what do you mean? That's what I want done first. It may be what you want done first, but maybe they're thinking of something, that's the last room you want done, not the first one. So it's perception. So that's why it's good. The Bible says in Proverbs, in a multitude of counselors, there's what? Safety. So when you're doing just something natural or spiritual, what's the best way in doing it? Also, you have to learn if you find yourself, and I think we have covered this somewhat, if you find yourself, okay, in the church, we're on a team to develop something, and this is, Callum's come, and this is what he wants to do, and he has asked us to be involved with it, and then Callum starts to talking to us of his idea, and we start, well, Callum hadn't thought, and Callum, he can't take it as attacking his idea, but he has to take it as, I never thought of that before, or let's think that through, or somebody comes up with something like, I never thought of doing that before. That is incredible. So, your team can help you to reach, but also in planning as well. Any questions so far? So let's get back here. Now, the other thing too in doing in planning, we're looking at 2020. I often encourage young people. Now, if you're young, okay, do it. Maybe this will tell whether you're younger or not. You need to be able to plan 1 year ahead and 5 years ahead. You really should try to do that. I really encourage young people to do that. Anything beyond 5 years, there can be too many major changes that could come within 5 years. I have been interviewed before. Those of you that know, when my wife and I have had to go back to the States to travel for what we call deputation, I meet a committee of about 30 men. And I have to give a report of the last 4 years, 5 years, whatever I've been doing here. They're allowed to ask any questions. I'm talking, when you sit there, sometimes they're just looking at you. You getting nervous? No. They just look at you. They're ministers. So they look at you. So you have to give an analysis of what you've done in the last few years. But then, at the same time, you have to give a projection. Well, what are you going to do the next 5 years? So then you have had to sit down and think, where do I want to be 5 years from now? And you can't say, well, I think, yeah, that, I've thought of a few things. That's good. Yeah. Well, what are those? And they'll even ask you 5 years out from when you're there meeting with them. What are you projecting? What are you thinking? Now, there are also people who are aware life changes, things change. But what it does, it causes you to think beyond today. And also when you plan for a year, it causes you to think beyond today. It would be good for you if you haven't yet, and maybe you're already on schedule. You've got a 1 year, 5 year, and somebody asked me one time, where do you want to be 10 years from now? I had to think on that. And I can't say I came up with this astounding thing, but it sure made me think. Because can I tell you, 10 years goes very quick. I can remember the day Brother Francis, now our bishop, he and Brother Austin used to come up and teach in our Saturday program, the part-time Bible school. We never had a full-time program. They would come up. You remember that Brother Francis would come up once a month? We'd fly him up, Brother Austin, and then of course others that were here teaching. And we were going to cross the Kingston Bridge one Saturday night, taking him back to the airport. I can almost take you to the spot. And he just simply said, Brother Kelley, 10 years from now, who's going to be doing what? And who are we training to move forward? We were just in conversation. He was just a minister like myself. He was not our bishop. Brother Dallas was our bishop. When he said, I thought, wow. Now, that's been a long time ago. That's before we started full-time school. That's what, 15 years ago. And before then, because then out of that, we started to talk about a full-time Bible school program. What are we doing? So only saying 10 years goes real quick. In time, we get no more of it. It's, we have, that's it. Sharon doesn't get any more time today than I have. Neither does Kelley. We all have the same amount of time, unless I die before the day is out. Then we got a problem. You're going to end up with more time than me. But some things just slip by. And as I told somebody the other day, I said, you have to learn how to take that and manage it. Don't let it manage you. You learn how to take your time that's been given to you. How do you manage that? Because if not, life will, other things will just shift you about. You have to take that in hand, so you need to plan. So it would just be good. I'm not asking you to write up on this or to think or to turn something into me, but it would be very good just to sit down and say, 1 year from now, this is what I would like to see. And also let me encourage you to even spend some time in prayer. 1 year from now, I would like to have said that I have taught a home Bible study. Now, again, when we talk about 1 year from now, I've planted 3 churches. There's been 4 people raised from the dead. 85 got the Holy Ghost. I've traveled the world 3 times. That's not really being realistic. Because some of our lives, okay, Mary Ann and Sharon, you still have at least 1 at home. Mary Ann has 3 at home, plus your husband, so you can't just throw everything to the wind and say, this is what I'm doing. You may say, oh, really? But yeah. So there are certain life constraints that's on you, but you can do something. Always remember the parable of the talent. 1, 2, 5. The Bible talks about there are some that do 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100-fold. You may be a 30-fold person or a 1-talent person, and there's nothing wrong with that. The wrong is when you don't use the 1 talent. Life and its constraints. You may not be able to, but as you use the 1, you may develop 2 or 3 other talents. Our problem is, wow, Callum has 5 talents, I've only got 1. I can't do anything. That's not what Jesus is saying. And here's the catch. The Bible talks about the 30, the 60, the 100-fold. So Callum could do 100-fold, but he's only doing 30. I'm a 30-fold and I'm doing 30. He's the one that's not measuring up. I spoke to someone just this week, and I said, what's happening? You're like my son. I said, my son, things came too easy to him. By that, at school and things, he could just pick up things. Just, it wasn't a problem. But I said, the downside to that is if you don't manage it, you become lazy in your learning. Because you develop the habit to do just what you need to get by. I got an A. And I'm not saying reaching for grades, but you know what? I got an A, but you could have excelled in that if you would have applied yourself. But you wouldn't. Now our daughter is like me. I got to work at it. I have to work at it. You could be telling me something, and that blank look on my face is blank. I mean, my brothers are trying to tell me because they can do all kinds of Jordan carpentry